Micro-teaching lesson on the use of grammar in the writing classroom. And just to give you a brief theoretical background based on research, there are a lot of materials, instructional materials for teachers on how to use grammar in the classroom, and if you do research on grammar in the writing classroom, you will find a lot of information that includes huge lists of strategies for actual use within the classroom. What you will not find much of is actual data-based research that shows whether or not the instruction of grammar improves writing, either writing skills or writing ability or actual improvements in the overall scope of writing projects. Now, in my research for this, I actually found a more recent study that has been done that is one of the first to show marked improvement in writing skills after the use of grammar instruction within the context of writing. You will find a lot of materials for instructional purposes that agree that the only real way to use grammar instruction is in the context of writing, that in isolation it's not as effective. But this study actually went through the entire process and proved that to be true, that in the context of writing, grammar instruction can improve overall writing skills. So I want to just show you and go through this brief activity with you on the differences between using a lesson on grammar in isolation versus using it in the context of writing. So if you'll see, this is just a brief lesson on comma use with appositives, and I apologize if it's a little blurry, but it just gives the details that a comma is used to set off an appositive or descriptive phrase, and that there are commas around it. And one of the rules that goes with this that you teach to students is that the sentence must stand and make sense if you were to remove that appositive or descriptive phrase or have it in, that it's just an enhancement and the commas serve to set off that information. And so it gives a few examples, and it says our babysitter Sally broke her leg, and the sentence would stand just fine as our babysitter broke her leg. And it's just used, those commas are put in there to set off the additional information that gives more detail. So this is an activity that I would ask you to just briefly follow along with. There's 5 example sentences, and you would look at these and you would determine where the comma belongs in each of these sentences to set off the appositive phrases. I'll give you just a moment to look at those. Okay, so if you'll notice, you would have students go through this, and it's simply Mrs. Smith, comma, who is our teacher, comma, has decided to retire. Now, what you've taught your students by using this type of activity is how to properly use commas. But whether or not they would be able to translate this lesson into their own writing and therefore improve their writing and be able to enhance it by adding extra details is yet to be determined. So I want to turn that and show you what Harry Noden refers to as brush strokes. And so I've termed it word art. So the appositive brush stroke, same concept as just illustrated, but this is through the context of writing. So it still describes what an appositive is, a noun that adds a second image to a preceding noun, or they are phrases generally speaking. So we start with the definition, but then we show sentences that have been enhanced. And the purpose of this is to show students that they can take an ordinary sentence and give it more pizzazz, bring it life by adding an appositive phrase to it with more description. So then I would invite you not just to simply determine where the commas would belong, to teach the use of commas, which is a grammatical necessity, but to have you actually use the commas and the appositive phrases to enhance the sentences, to add life, add energy, add a brushstroke, to your writing. So I would ask you to go ahead and add in a positive phrase to each of these sentences. And I am going to ask you to share one response, if you will.
Putting me on the spot. Oh. The volcano, which towered above the skyline of Hawaii, spewed forth lava.
Okay. So you take a basic sentence, the volcano spewed forth lava, which, if you filled a paper with writing that was simply subject, verb, object, subject, verb, object, it would be boring, and the reader would not be nearly as engaged as if you did what you just did and added some better details, some more description, and a positive phrase that the sentence is fine without, but it's better with. And the end result of all of this is to put it into action, and it is all in the timing. And I would suggest that this is an activity that you would do when students have actual writing of their own with them. So you'd have them bring in some writing piece. It doesn't have to be long. And the best kind are descriptive writing pieces because they can add so much and they can see immediately how it affects their writing and how it adds to their writing. But you'd have them bring in something, and then you can do a variety of brush strokes. Harry Noden's information is amazing, and he has a variety of different brush strokes that he uses. And in conclusion, grammar, while there are pros and cons to the teaching of it within the classroom, because if you teach it in isolation, students may be able to do a million drills in a row of that one grammatical concept or even multiple concepts layered on top of each other. But when it's translated into their own writing, they may not have the skill actually in them to make their writing better and use grammar correctly. So it is in using grammar within the context of their own writing that you can be the most successful in a writing classroom in improving writing skills and grammar skills. Thank you.